a lot of it in recent times, I would say the last 10 years, really since the iPhone came out, working on collaboration, digital disruption, how the vast quantities of data in the world are changing how we operate and how businesses and consumers measure value. My first book, Data Crush, spoke about the upcoming growth of data that we were seeing 4 or 5 years ago and the increasing importance of analytics in understanding the world and delivering that value. Fortunately, that was International Book of the Year that year for business, and then just last year I followed that book up with my second book called Jerk. I used to build spacecraft when I started my career, and jerk is actually a term from physics among its other more colorful uses. And it's really just a discussion about how companies like an Airbnb, an Uber, Google and Amazon use analytics to dramatically change their relationship with their customers, dramatically change outcomes and expectations, and so on. So a lot of focus on what people are calling digital transformation, but actually making that happen and using technologies to get these disruptive results. Recently, I joined the Institute of Robotic Process Automation. So I have to admit that probably 6 or 7 months ago, I hadn't even heard the phrase RPA. So I've been on a very steep learning curve. But from my time in the late 1990s deploying ERP systems for major banks, including Citibank, what I find with RPA is sort of everything old is new again to a certain extent. Many of the same problems that we faced in the 90s as we deployed ERP systems are directly relevant to companies that are now trying to leverage RPA to continue on the improvement path that we've all been on for decades. I do a lot of talking and writing about the difference between improvement and innovation, and I think a lot of the interest that I'm seeing in RPA now is it can be simply a continuation of our improvement path that we've been on for decades, or it could be an innovation path. It all depends on how you deploy it, and because you have that option of either innovating or improving, it's an easier way to get organizations to start using new digital technologies and new artificial intelligence, if you go that far, to start to generate value that the organization is willing to absorb. In my second book, I talk about, and over the course of 3 years between the two books, I did over 300 presentations globally on digital disruption, big data, analytics, artificial intelligence. And very obvious from the discussions with all these business leaders and political leaders around the world that there was something new going on. And that can be tied back to the millennial generation, as you see from this article with Time. But I'll go through the 6 new normals. There's 6 things that we've found in all of the analysis that we've done over the last few years that are driving business change. First of these is quality. If, like me, in my career I have done Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, offshoring, CPI, SPC, ITIL, ITSM. I mean, you name the quality program, and I've done it, and I've been certified in it, and I've tried to implement it at large companies. Is that after 30 years or so of trying to implement superb quality in our organizations, we've actually been incredibly successful. And our clients now simply expect perfection. I talk about this all the time, and think about your own behavior with your smartphone. In the less than 10 years that the smartphone and the app have been around, you and I have collectively downloaded 200 billion apps. Of those, 98% of the time, we download it, we open it once, and we never open it again. Expect perfection every time, and your customers, the problem with this is that you don't get credit for doing a good job. Your clients just expect it. What happens is they call you when something goes wrong, and they expect instant gratification, and they expect a resolution of their problem instantaneously. And if you don't deliver it, then they just move on. They go to the next app. So unfortunately, we've been so successful at improving organizational and operational quality for these decades that people no longer care about quality unless it's absent. Big challenge for organizations. Number 2 is ubiquity. globalization and think about what this phone does when you use it. It doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter what time it is. I expect my problem to be solved. If I happen to stop by a car dealership at 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon and lo and behold, I want to buy a car, I better be able to get my loan approved in the next 5 minutes while I'm standing there with an app that pre-populates all my data. And if not, I'm not going to go with you. We've actually done such a phenomenal job with the global supply chain and delivering anything anywhere, now by drone, that people simply expect to get whatever they want no matter where they are and no matter how ridiculous that expectation. Time is number 3, immediacy. I want it now. People, when Amazon came up with Prime shipping, same-day shipping, was about 3 years ago, not 2 years ago, people thought they were crazy. And now, again, if you're like me, if it takes more than 2 days for me to receive something I order online, I'm frustrated. I'm upset. Why is it taking you so long? So the better we do at meeting people's immediate needs, the more they expect it, and the more they expect things to speed up. Number 4, disengagement. And this is the toughest one, I think, for all existing organizations. Our customers don't care what it takes to give them what they want. They just want it. And in fact, our customers expect us to hide costs, complexity, regulation, legal issues, compliance issues. I expect you to hide all of that from me and just give me what I want as seamlessly and easily as possible. And the first thing in the world for an engineer to do is to make the complex appear simple, but exactly what our customers expect. So this is a huge problem for companies because it's not necessarily where we've been. It's not how we've organized ourselves in the past. We talk about things like software as a service or cloud or infrastructure as a service. I now talk to clients and companies about results as a service. All I want is the end result. And I couldn't care less how hard it is for you to deliver it to me. I just want it. And when you give me the result that I'm looking for as a service, maybe at the end I'll pay you. We'll see. So engagement's really tough for existing companies. Next, intimacy. So one challenge is, and you probably have faced this yourself with your smartphone, we're constantly connected, we're constantly talking to people, but are we really, are we getting engagement? Are we meeting our need for intimacy? And if you're like me, on Facebook, you've friended a whole bunch of people you went to high school with, and you didn't even like them in high school. But it gives you something to talk to them about because you're looking for connection and you're looking to be understood and you're looking to be part of a community. So as an organization, if you can use analytics and data and RPA, which I'll get to achieve this intimacy and this understanding of your customers, I go to you as a 2% app instead of the 98% that I ignore. So this is a huge differentiator. And particularly for credit unions, I actually use a credit union, and I also use a major bank, and I do all of my personal banking with a credit union because they're phenomenal. They know me, they understand me, they give me great service. Things happen instantaneously, not over 3 or 4 days. It costs less, and it's a better experience all around. I will be a customer of that credit union for my entire life. And so this is a spot where credit unions can really shine against the so-called big boys, the large players and banks, and literally outmaneuver them very readily. And then is purpose. And purpose is interesting. It's particularly true of millennials where they're looking for the answer to what am I doing here? How do I make a difference? What's my place in the universe? And so if someone goes into a Starbucks and orders a non-fat, solar-powered, fair trade, gluten-free, sugar-free latte for $12, that's why. Because they want to be able to say on Facebook that they're being a good citizen and a good human and they're contributing to society. So if you can connect with this need for purpose in people's lives, you'll be part of the 2% of apps that they actually use more than once. I'm working with a very large mutual fund right now, and I'm literally giving them guidance. You need to have investment funds for negative carbon footprint fund, and you need a sexual fairness in the workplace hiring fund. So you have an equal for equal time and equal roles for men and women. These very purpose-centered sort of things. Yeah, I want to get 7 or 8% of my investment, but this is why I go with you instead of a competitor. So however you align your business, feeding into people's sense of purpose becomes a key part of being relevant to them going forward. And, coming back to jerk, these are the actual equations of jerk. It's what you feel when you slam on the brake or you slam on the gas in your car. And it's an increasing rate of acceleration. It's an instantaneous change in force. And it's highly destructive to systems not designed for it. This is why Uber is disruptive. This is why Airbnb is blowing away the hotel industry. Uber is actually worth more today than Volkswagen is, the world's largest car manufacturer. These companies are using data, they're using analytics to meet people's 6 new normal expectations and blowing away existing competitors that can't compete at the same pace and meet these same 6 normals. So we've done over the past 5 or 6 years of really focusing on big data to focusing on digital transformation. And digital transformation is more than just having an app that does the same old things. It's meeting these 6 new normals, and it's meeting people's changing expectations in the world. Analytics is a key piece of this. And you do need to continue on the path of improvement that you've been following for decades, but you also need to innovate. This is why RPA, I think, is becoming so interesting to companies right now, because you can continue on the improvement path that you've been following for a very long time, but also start introducing innovation into your organization and getting these disruptive outcomes that customers are expecting. It's absolutely urgent. Like I said, the iPhone has only been around for 10 years. Imagine if I took your iPhone away from you right now and you had to go 2 days without it. Most people who have used one for a few months can't conceive of that world. I joke with people when they use Uber. If Uber told you to drive off a cliff, you probably would. And most of us, if you're dropped in the middle of a city somewhere and didn't have your iPhone or your smartphone, you would never be able to figure out where you are and how to get to where you need to be. So these disruptive business models are a new normal. There are more of them coming. In your particular space, Simple Bank, you're not familiar with them. They're kind of an Uber of banking, and they provide phenomenal service with no fees and almost no infrastructure. So no business is safe from this disruption, and the more, and when I talk to gigantic companies that say I'm too big to fail, it's not going to affect me, that thought process and that mindset is exactly why they're vulnerable. And there are no barriers to entry anymore. I'm going to be in Washington later this week talking to the World Bank, and they're asking me do I think there's a trend towards deregulation in financial services. And my answer is it's not going to be deregulation, it's going to be unregulation. It's going to be ignoring regulations that are out there, because if I ignore the regulations, I get better outcomes. And I'll really just pay the fines associated with it to get customers what they want, whether or not my compliance department likes it. That is becoming a new normal in the business strategy that we're seeing out there. On this slide, people, process, policy, platform. If you're like me, for decades, this is what we focused on. We tried to improve these 4 inputs. We've tried to cut costs. We've tried to hopefully cut time. And we've really pushed hard to get this endless improvement process that was really introduced by Edward Deming in the 1950s. The problem is that we've had these waves of sort of innovation, but mostly improvement. We automated things in the 90s, and we optimized it a little bit further after that. We outsourced what we could, run lean and virtual. Now we've gotten to the point where there's almost no more improvement left in our business processes. And to innovate and to meet people's 6 new normal needs, I have to digitize. I have to act a different way. RPA is the bridge between the old and the new. In that, I can automate what is still manual. I tell people all the time that if you're doing RPA today, you look at business process steps that have probably already been analyzed 4, 5, 6 times in the last 20 years to see if they could be automated, and for some reason your organization didn't already automate. Either too complex, it was too costly, the ROI wasn't there. But if you have a process in your business today that's still manual, there's a reason it's still manual. What is allowing RPA to allow us to revisit these process steps is that the technology is good enough now that we can actually automate things that eluded automation for decades. So, okay, it's just software. There's no miracle to this. is software that can replicate the behaviors of people and can start to act like it thinks like people too. The more advanced technologies, the AI and the machine learning sorts of technologies fall into this category. It supports or supplants our existing employees. Where it really shines is in the processing of transactions, manipulation of data, setting up responses, and communicating, all the stuff that's on the slide here. And it's valuable in particular where we have, high volumes of repetitive transactions. It's very transaction-oriented. How quickly can I get this thing done? There's a degree of time sensitivity because one of the things that you really need to look at with robots is cutting time out of your business cycles rather than strictly focusing on cutting costs. And places where errors would tend to happen and where errors could be very costly. If anyone saw the Oscars last night, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How do you use it? Again, look for these four sorts of characteristics in processes that have eluded automation in the past, where they remain manual. We talk about people who are in swivel chairs. You know, they log into one system and they're swiveling their chair to go into another system, and they're literally copying and pasting data from one system to the other. Absolutely insane that we do that. But there are literally millions of people in the world whose job it is to re-enter data in systems all day long. Partly because of multi-platform, and we're stuck with a lot of legacy tools and technologies, and the price, the ROI just wasn't there. So fixing that as quickly as possible is something that RPA allows. The thing that I find with RPA, and very few people seem to think of it, I'm looking at replacing the data entry people, the lowest level people in the organization who are doing these tasks. What we actually give guidance to people is start looking at the supervisors of those people. Who's more able to follow a rule perfectly, repetitively all the time without error and without malice or prejudice? Be a robot. So organizations that are looking at replacing the lowest level people, there's a strong argument that says the people that where we're potentially going to get the biggest positive impact on your organization is the supervisors and auditors and watchers of those people. And so that's a bit an example of disruption in your business, where changing the focus of what you're replacing with a robot could potentially have significantly greater benefits and impacts on your organization. Changes certainly cost. That's why I bring up the fact that people have tried to automate this stuff in the past. If it hasn't been automated yet, it didn't pass ROI muster. So what are you going to do differently this time so that you actually get the good business case and can use RPA to automate some of these remaining steps? If you don't look at tangential benefits like saving time and having a robot that works 24 hours a day instead of just day shifts, you're going to miss the ROI calculation and you're not going to get funded. Complexity, a lot of these manual tasks are still complex because they are complex and they need human inputs. Can you get a robot that can adequately replace those roles and do it more efficiently and more effectively? Compliance. A lot of banking regulations require maker-checker. You have to have eyes on. Someone might need to be certified to approve a transaction. There's an open question with the regulatory bodies of, does it necessarily have to be a human being, or can it be a robot? I'm in New York City and Washington this week having those discussions with major organizations and regulatory bodies of how do we embrace robots in such a way that organizations can put these to greater use and achieve greater compliance and better regulatory oversight. So those are some of the challenges that we're seeing in this space, and the answers aren't there yet, but people are actively working on trying to get this figured out over the course of the next couple of years. And the greatest question I find is if you're going to automate a whole series of roles in your organizations, where a credit union, there's 50 people that are doing this data entry stuff, if you eliminate 90% of those jobs, what are you going to do with the 40 people that are either eliminated or repurposed? Are you going to train them? What are you going to train them to do? And most importantly, of the 10% of the folks that you keep around, who do you keep? what's the definition of a good employee if all of these just basic transactional steps are being done by a robot? Do we now value creativity? Do we now value problem solving, as opposed to being able to enter the data correctly time and time and time again? Find success with RPA is absolutely critical that you have legal involved, that you have HR involved. As part of defining a good business case for the company and the use of RPA. So I mean, you got to find this sweet spot of improved effectiveness, that improvement thing that we all care about, accuracy. Time is a huge factor with RPA. Can you cut time out of your business cycle, back to the 6 new normal expectations our customers have, and when you automate the most offending, time-consuming step in your process, what's the next worst one? So the process where you're going to be constantly attacking the expenditure of time, and where you need to focus your energies will constantly move if you're getting it right. Of course, reduce costs, because we all still are measured by reducing costs for sure. One of the things that I've worked out with my team is this methodology we call TOGS, T-O-G-S. We achieve transformation and to take something, a disruptive technology like robots, RPA, and make it effective, you need to focus on 4 different streams of effort. Say technology, which if you're an IT person like me, that's where we always focus, and we're generally pretty good at it. The good news is RPA technology is very mature now, and it works very well. It scales very well, which is also critical. And so if you have a project that goes poorly, it's almost never going to be because of the technology. Operations, most companies are pretty good here. They figure out where to apply the robots, how to get the most value out of them, et cetera. But there's going to be unanticipated operational impacts to doing this stuff. And you have to think those through and make sure you're measuring for them and working to improve against those operational constraints. We all talk about it. We all hate it. We never fund it. If you have the same experience as me in this space, everyone talks about governance. It's a necessary evil. But what we find is that governance is one of the key factors in succeeding with RPA. I hear almost on a daily basis of companies that have piloted RPA. They've done a deployment, they've tried it out, it works great, they've got the improvements that they want, but they try to scale up or scale out, they hear from legal, they hear from HR, they hear from compliance, and all of them are saying, no, you can't do this, you can't move forward. Here's all kinds of constraints to getting more benefit from the technology. So governance becomes a huge issue in terms of long-term success of these projects. And more so is sponsorship. If you're going to, there's a major bank doing a very big RPA deployment. They're anticipating eliminating 10,000 jobs, which itself is a little scary. The challenge then is someone in that organization currently manages 10,000 people, and in the future they won't. I'm thinking they're not going to be very supportive of that project, and you need to figure out how to get them on board, or the project is not going to go forward. So to make these disruptive technologies stick and to get the value from them, managing sponsorship issues, getting all the parts of the business aligned to what you're trying to achieve, and when someone is going to operate at some kind of loss because RPA is deployed, you got to figure out how to make them a winner in that new order. And that's how you get them on board, and that's how you develop the sponsorship that you need. So, we look at all 4 of these roadmaps. We make sure that they all are aligned. That where we have our greatest weaknesses in the G and the S quadrants is where we focus a lot of our time and energy trying to help companies navigate. Another one of the technical challenges is, are you using the right bot for the right implementation? Mimic bots that just literally replicate human activity. They log in, they read a document, they enter data into a screen. It's perfect for simple tasks, very repetitive. It's thinking of the process, just getting data in. These bots tend to be cheaper, they tend to be less complex, and you can get immediate business value from them a little bit faster. Bots do a little thinking. They look at data over time. They get a little bit smarter over time. There's a bit of cognition involved in how they work, but it's a bit more complex. You're giving the bot more control and more ability to make decisions, which means that you probably need more oversight, and there's going to be more political concerns about getting them into the environment. And then IQ bots, or artificial intelligence, this is where you're giving them a high degree of independence and independent control, logic. They actually do decision making without human intervention. That's much more complex, obviously, a lot more risk, a lot more value. But picking which one of these three is critical as you pick the process steps you're looking to automate, to ensure that you're using the right technology for the right use case. Operational challenges. Again, we're so focused on just getting improvement that if that's all we're looking for, the business case may not be that great. When I fix a current process bottleneck, I make it work faster and cheaper, where does the bottleneck move to? It doesn't go away, it just changes where it resides. And then how do you address that next bottleneck? Are you ready to deal with the staffing issues? For the people that are going to be repurposed, how are you going to train them? How do you get them comfortable with the new role? Are they qualified for it? And how is HR developing a plan to make sure that that all happens? And I keep reiterating this, any steps that you have that are still manual, they probably are regulated to be manual or sufficiently complex that you couldn't do it in the past. So how are you different if you're using RPA technology? And then finally, critical, what new metrics do you need to measure in an RPA implementation so that you capture these 6 new normal value expectations that our customers have? Again, if you measure just quality or just cost, your customers expect you to constantly improve that. You're not going to get points with your customers for doing something a little bit faster, a little bit cheaper. You still need to do it, but what are metrics in terms of customer satisfaction, engagement, meeting their need for purpose is part of the RPA deployment so that you can start meeting these new expectations. Governance. One of the things I always talk about in IT is, are you scaling up or scaling out? Scaling up is so I talk about analog businesses, capital-centric organizations that use what I call analog trinity, bureaucracy, process, and rules to create more capital wealth. And if you're like me, your entire career, you've been trained and educated and certified in using bureaucracy, process, and rules to make more wealth. When we talk about scaling a technology, we scale up. We add more bureaucracy, process, and rules so that as the technology used more heavily in our organizations, we can manage it. That's a great way of applying this technology, and it certainly isn't the digital way. If analogs use bureaucracy, process, and rules to make capital wealth, digitals use ability, social media, and analytics to create information wealth, which an analyst at one of the credit unions, probably you're trying to do is figure out how to make more information-based wealth based on analysis. This is the digital transformation you're working on. Digital and information-focused economy and business is how do I scale out, not up, not how do I put in more steps and more reviews and more constraints and controls. It's how do I build more capability. How do I do things like create a center of excellence where people that need expertise and ability and tools can go so they can implement independently, but with guidance. And so scaling out versus scaling up is a key piece of making sure that you're managing this effectively and that you achieve the operational success with RPA that you're looking for. So that's one of the key governance areas. I mentioned this before, but do you use the robots to do the work or alternatively supervise and check the work? There's no better maker checker or checker of a process than a robot that says, here's the rules, did you follow the rules, yes, no, I don't care how long I've worked with you, I don't care that we're neighbors, did you do it correctly? So looking at robots in these more oversight areas is where we're seeing a lot of pushback, but a lot of benefit. So that's one of the places that we poke at a little bit. Again, new metrics are key. If you try to do it with the same old metrics, you're probably going to fail at the ROI just like you did 10 years ago when you tried to replace the same process step with automation. So part of getting the right ROI is the application of new metrics and meeting customers' new expectations through those metrics. And then what is the definition of, quote, performance? Who is a high-performing employee post-RPA? Where we keep people in the process, how do they add value? As I talked about the expectation of perfection and quality, your people, you should be using robots to deliver the Six Sigma level perfection that we all expect, and your people should be there for all the exceptions. Exact opposite of how we design systems for the last 30 years, but that's how we have to do it going forward. But that's what a key to success. And then finally, sponsorship challenge. I never made the connection between laundry detergent and race cars, but there's sponsorship. If you see it deploying RPA and using it, who in the organization wins and who loses? If someone loses, how do you turn them into a win, or how do you help them with that transition? How do you both qualify and quantify the risks? If you don't do this, the 6 new normals, if you don't meet my new expectations, you're a 98% app, and I'm not going to use you again, and I'm never coming back. On your smartphone, I bet you have 20 apps right now where you downloaded it, opened it once, and never looked at it again. That's what happens if you don't use these technologies to meet these new expectations that you and I have as customers going forward. So the eye chart here, representative use cases. The beauty of this is that, yes, people, particularly in your industry, I've worked with several major banks, starting to talk to some other credit unions and smaller regional banks. People are using these technologies, and they are getting breakthrough results. You can see in here 20%, 25% staff reductions, reduced rework, higher quality, better outcomes. Use cases are absolutely out there. Again, the challenge is when these people finish their pilot and they try to scale up or scale out, then all these other factors start to be key parts of determining success or failure. And the discussion around RPA. I pointedly didn't get into a lot of deep discussion on the technologies. Their salespeople are going to be really good at having their discussion and tell you why Blue Prism or Automation Anywhere is the best thing ever. But what we're finding through IRPA, the Institute of Robotic Process Automation, as we interact with all the different players in the ecosystem, customers, suppliers, and implementers, these are the things that are determining success or failure more so than picking the right tool. So hopefully it was helpful, and I think we'll now open it up to any questions. Thanks to this screen.
Okay. So thanks, Chris, for the wonderful presentation, walking us through this robotic process automation. We are open now for questions from the participants. I have seen a couple of entries here on the chat session. I'll open up. I'll wait for anybody else before I summarize the questions I've received.
I have one question, Chris. This is about the use cases that you have listed out. In those use cases, the target impact, you have, when I read them, it appears to be more focused around the cost and operational efficiency. I see that the value is often operational efficiency is more of a low-hanging fruit, but the real value is more on how it can really drive the business.
Yes. Yeah, you're exactly right, and I talk about the low-hanging fruit thing all the time. Going back to Edward Deming in the 1950s, he talked about constant improvement, but he also said about every 3 or 4 years you had to demolish your processes, pick entirely new metrics, and start all over again, because you would have picked low-hanging fruit, you would have picked hanging fruit, you got high-hanging fruit, there's no fruit left. You move to a new tree. So, unfortunately, our organizations over many decades have, we've got used to improvement. We're comfortable with improvement. Working with a CTO of a major bank, and he said, how do people choose between improvement and innovation? And the response was habit. We all like to think that we could be innovative, but we have the habit of improvement. So fighting your organization's habit of constantly going for improvement and trying to convince everyone to innovate, RPA is a technology that lets you do a little bit of both. So look for the ways in which these robots can come in and significant improvement, low-hanging fruit, in your business processes where there's currently issues and opportunity. Recognize that this is a technology that, if it's properly applied over time, can lead to dramatic innovation. And the only way you're going to get there is, again, with new metrics. Pick those new metrics that customers care about and making that part of the value equation as you choose where to deploy RPA. That helps.
Thank you. Okay. Chris, I'm going to be asking you the next question. Here is a question specifically for the Financial Industry Credit Union. When tasks are performed by multiple teams and often in silos, how do we really differentiate the batch process optimization that needs to proceed and then a technical automation like you talked about? So what is your experience and how do we go about it? Can an RPA solve any manual problem, or should it be a consolidation like a warehouse or things like that in place?
So one of the things I tell people that they should look for with RPA, I think, in the question, what about operational silos? Those silos are exactly why we still have manual steps in many of our processes. Because for whatever reason, those silos exist. It's too expensive, it's too complicated to automate, eliminating those silos and integrating those systems. What robots do is it allows us to take the ad hoc means that we've been using to make that integration happen, which would really be a single person logging into the two systems and transferring data manually, and we'll do that with a robot instead. So when we talk about operational silos, yeah, we have silos, but we also have workarounds. Usually it's people. So what we're doing is we're replacing those people with robots to close operational gaps between silos. But the other cool thing about robots, if you think about it over a longer term, once I pull a person out of that role and automated the bridging between those silos, there's a layer of abstraction between the systems and the people with robot, and now it's actually much easier to make an integration happen. If you've done significant systems integration in a large organization, which I've done many times, the difficult part is mostly the people. Getting them to define all your process steps, etc. If I can pull the people out of those integration steps, I actually have the opportunity to make the integration happen more smoothly, more cleanly, and more inexpensively. So, we look for those silos and business processes where there's people that bridge the gap between the silos. Strategically, where you want to go is once I pull people out of there, there's the opportunity to start doing meaningful integration between those systems and get really breakthrough, innovative results.
Okay. Thank you. Chris, the question is about credit card fraud. One of the topic is, we have RPA in place, but while the business rules can be defined, how to resolve customer issues, but on sensitive topics, customers are interested in live person talking to them. So what's your experience? How do you think you can get around that?
Excuse me. I think that's exactly the opportunity. Again, I go with my behavior and the behavior I see with all my friends and colleagues and family with their smartphones. When I want something fast and easy and quick, I want it to be instantaneous. And what I value at that point in time is simplicity and speed. When I want deep understanding, both of me and what I'm looking for, that's when I want to actually have a human being that understands me, that is going to spend some time with me and walk me through it. So what I look at with this robotic stuff is, how do I automate, when someone is looking for just fast, cheap, and easy, get to them as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible, with repetition. That's where robots shine. And look to repurpose my staff that previously did those steps. Their job then is, in the exception or in the moments where someone cares about personalization and intimacy and understanding me, that's when a person gets involved and makes a much more valuable interaction take place. My first book, I call this polarization. I either want the Amazon.com, Costco warehouse, I'm buying four gallons of mayonnaise as cheaply as possible experience, because I don't value the transaction taking place, or I want the Nordstrom's, you're going to follow me around and help me pick out my clothes, the very highly personalized, high-touch experience. So I need to use robots to segment my customers so that I understand which of those experiences are they looking for and give them the experience that they want at that point in time. I guess the only parting shot I have on that one is you look at JCPenney's, Macy's, Sears, all these retailers that are going out of business. Those are companies that had a strategy that was in between the extremes. They were more expensive than Amazon, but not as expensive as Nordstrom, and they gave maybe better personalization than Walmart, but not as good as Nordstrom. The road is how you get run over now. There's no middle market. There is no middle strategy. Customers either want as cheap and fast and easy as possible, or they'll pay to have a better experience. So if you're using robots, make things better, faster, cheaper, so that your people can focus on the richer experience when customers really need it.
Explain. Thanks a lot. And we wait for the participants. Your lines are open now. Ask your questions. If there are no further questions, we'd like to end this session by once again the word of thanks. Thank you really, Chris, enlightening with this. I personally think is a great concept for financial industry, credit unions. Definitely, we're all going to benefit. Thank you once again, and the participants, you'll receive soon, the recording, and also you'll receive email for our next monthly webinar, sometime follow up within a week. And once again, thank you everybody for time and participating.
Thanks.
Oh, he's up.